Good morning, everybody. Laurie Meyer here, and I am so thrilled to be back for a Stamp-Along event. Martinette and Joanne, your projects this morning have been so awesome and so inspiring. I am definitely going to be casing, and I really appreciate you sharing them with us. And Carolyn and Trish, I am looking forward to seeing your presentations later today as well. And Martinette, just wanted to thank you so much for keeping us going. It's incredible to me, as you stated earlier today, that next month will mark the 1-year anniversary of the Stamp-Along events, and they've just been so much fun. And I've been able to get so many ideas that I've shared with friends and customers and really enjoyed that. And just wanting to check and make sure I am live. I see Martinette has said hello, so hello back. And also Tina, good morning. My apologies, as I'm sure you know, I've mentioned before, the way I have things set up, I'm not necessarily going to be able to see comments, but I will do my best as we're going along. I am going to jump in because I want to make sure that I am out of the way for Carolyn, and also that I have just a couple minutes to show you the project. This morning, I am going to focus on a bundle, a punch bundle, which I'm sure you guys have seen and many of you have, the Flowers of Friendship bundle. I love everything about this. I love the stamps, I love the font, I love the punch, and I really wanted to just get it and start playing. There are many things that are out on Pinterest with different ideas, and let me share an idea that I had and the project that I am going to make this morning. And this is the card. It is a sort of fun fold. It has a little bit of an edge on the front. And really what I'm focusing on is the technique that I want to show you to be able to stamp using your Stamparatus, be able to stamp without any templates or anything else, images to go in a circle. And this is, I think, super fun. And also I wanted to give you just a couple of things to think about when you're using the punch, because there are multiple shapes that punch makes, and there are just a couple of things that you might want to keep in mind when you're using it. But this is the card that I'm going to make. It also features quite a few of the new in colors, which I am in love with. I think they are absolutely gorgeous. And let's just kind of jump in. Let me show you where we're heading. This is the focal point, and this is what we're going to be creating. And I'm sure many of you have seen wreath builder templates that are available. They're kind of like stencils. They have square holes in them, and they work incredibly well. But I wanted to figure out a way that I can make a wreath using my Stamparatus and using grid paper. And this is the grid paper that comes with a Stamparatus. And I was successful, which is yay, great. And I wanted to share what I did with you and maybe inspire some different ideas. So I'm not going to draw the template. I'm going to tell you how I drew the template, and you can create your own. But if you grab a piece of the grid paper that comes with the Stamparatus, and obviously I have it turned on the inch side, not on the centimeter side. And what I did is, you may be able to see, I tried to mark it. Let me get a blank piece of paper so we're not distracted by the stamping. But I put it square, and you'll see on each corner I marked where the corners are. And then I drew a line. So I knew that this was my square. Then I took this piece, and this piece is 4 inches square. So I used a 4-inch square basic white. This is a thick basic white. And again, I drew that square on my grid. And then what I want to do is I want to shift to a diamond shape. And I want to get the diamond in the middle. So the key here is, if I've got a 4-inch wide piece of paper, which is what I'm starting with, The midpoint of that is 2 inches. And this is so easy with a piece of grid paper because I've got a line. I've got a cheat sheet. I don't even need a ruler. I've got a line right here. I've got a line right here. And I've got lines on the other side that give me the midpoint. So if I simply change the orientation of my square piece of paper and line it up so each of the corners is on that 2 inch or that midpoint line, and then I draw around that piece of paper. I've got my diamond, I've got my square, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my paper and stamp. So the first step is to build your template, a square and a diamond. I used 4-inch square, and then we're going to pop it into our Stamparatus, and this is where you're going to see the magic. And this is just darn fun. Because when you start this, if you've not made a wreath like this before, when you start it, you think, yeah, I'm not really sure if this is going to work. But it does, trust me. So what you do is anytime you are building a circle with this kind of template, just remember this phrase, start on the square. So when you're starting to stamp, if you have an image that you're going to put all the way around your circle, start stamping with the orientation of the paper like this. Start on the square. And all I've done is I'm putting my paper in that square that I have marked off on my grid. And I am going to use a couple of the stamps from this stamp set. I'm going to use the smaller flower, and then I'm going to use each of the leaves. And I have lined this up. I did not want to bore you to tears, but I have lined it up so that when I stamp the flower, that's the first one I'm going to stamp. I have it pretty close to the edge of the piece of paper. And again, I'm starting on the square, and I'm just going to go all the way around. So let's just do this. I am going to use the Fresh Freesia ink for the flowers, and I love, 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 love this color. It is absolutely gorgeous. So you're simply going to stamp. Let me get that a little bit better on the bottom. And obviously we're not going to move the stamp because it's hanging out on the Stamparatus, but we're going to move the paper. So what you're going to do is, I like to go counterclockwise. You can go either direction you want. So you've done your square, you're going to turn to your diamond, and you're just going to get your paper situated. Grab your ink and stamp again. And you're going to have 8 images if you stamp all the way around. So I've done my diamond. Now I'm moving back to a square. And I am just going to repeat this pattern. And you just need to remember square, diamond, and you keep on going. And then we're going to fill in just a minute with one of the leaves. But I just wanted to do this all the way around. And the cool thing about this, or one of the cool things about this, is when you get your template set up, you can store that piece of paper in your Stamparatus bag and then just grab it. Maybe put a little bit of a label so you know that you're using 4-inch square paper when you're doing this. You can also size up or size down, meaning if I wanted to use, let's say, a 3-inch square. Cool. Just build your template so you've got 3 inches square to start with. And then your diamond would be at 1.5 inches, because 1.5 obviously is half of 3. And you can have a 3-inch piece of paper that you would use to create a design like this. Or on the opposite end, let's say you wanted to make it, I don't know, 6 inches. You've got enough room on your Stamparatus where you could make it 6 inches. And I think a 6-inch wreath would be so cool in maybe a 3D piece, a framed piece that you might want to do for, oh, I don't know, Christmas, or, you know, a sampler that you could put together. Or let's think about samplers for a minute. If you wanted to do samplers, multiple samplers, and you wanted to have a couple of those with some wreath images, you could do 2-inch squares or 2.5-inch squares. It's really up to you what you want to do, and it's really kind of fun. I will say that you probably want to use smaller rather than larger stamps on this, because as you can see, you do need to be a little careful to make sure that as you're stamping, you're not overcrowding. And that's why it will take just a couple seconds, a couple minutes to get your stamps where you want them to be. The next one that I'm going to put in, we've done the flowers, I'm going to put in that little leaf stamp. And I've already prepped this on my Stamparatus, so I know exactly where to place that particular stamp. And I'm using the new Soft Succulent ink for this, which I also love. And when I'm starting, and I really should move this, although to be honest it doesn't matter since I've already positioned it, but I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. So I'm bringing it back to square, start on the square, I'm bringing in my second stamp, and I've inked that up with Soft Succulent, and I'm just going to go ahead and put that in where I want it to be, and it's kind of filling in some of the area. And I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did on that original flower stamp, and just go all the way around. And because the flowers are the same distance, since they're coming from the exact same stamp, where I'm filling in that leaf is going to fill in on each of the flowers in the exact same way. And it's just a really cool thing to do. If you have some even smaller stamps, like maybe a star or a circle, you can very easily put in another image on something like this and get some of the white space to go away even more. Maybe put them inside the flowers and start filling in the middle. But I've got a plan for the middle, so I don't want to get my design inside. I'm keeping my design outside where I've got the flowers. And I am just adding those leaves in. What's also fun, and I've seen this, is let's say we're dealing with the flowers. What I could have done if I wanted to add just a little bit more texture and interest is maybe for the flowers that I stamped on the square, I could use one color. And the flowers that I stamped on a diamond, I could use another color. And it gives, you know, even more dimension and interest because there are different colors that are coming in. So I'm almost done with my little leaves here. And then what I wanted to do, and you will see, is I wanted to just fill in the corners just a little bit. And I've prepped another of my Stamparatus plates with one more of the stamps from the set. And I'm just going to add a little bit to the corners just to give them a little bit of interest. So we are almost all set with this. So there we have the basics of what we're building with our little template. And then the other piece, and I'm going to bring back in the sample, the other piece that I wanted is I wanted to just add one leaf in each corner. And I wanted to use the larger leaf rather than the smaller. The smaller is the one that I have been using as I've been going around and building my circle. And yes, I do have the stamp already put into my Stamparatus. And for this one, what you're going to notice is I only stamped that largely 4 times. So I only have it in the corners, which means the only orientation that I'm going to use to stamp these is when my paper is square. So I'm going to go ahead, as I have, put that paper in on the square. See if I can not make a complete mess here with my ink, which I think I've already done, but that's okay. And just stamp that leaf. And I know that I need to completely move to the square, so I just turned it 90 degrees. I have it back on the square. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that again. And just fill in my corners. I just wanted a little bit of something on the corners because I know I'm going to put a sentiment in the middle, but I want to make sure that there's enough going on that the card has some interest. So just stamping those, and you can see this goes pretty quickly. It can get more involved, obviously, if you have more stamps, but if you've only got a few and you get it set up, it's pretty quick. And this is a great way to do a Christmas card with some hollies or different stars or snowflakes. And then you've got a really, really pretty card. And then what I like to do is I will use this again. And here's my cheat sheet. You can see that I purposely stamped the flower, the little leaf, and the big leaf. And I'm going to save this piece of paper because I will be able to recreate this image fairly easily because I know where those stamps were laid out. And I'm also going to mark that I used a 4-inch square piece of paper when I put that together. So this is going to go into my Stamparatus bag, and that way I will have the template and I will also know where my stamps actually need to go. So the next things that I wanted to do on this card is I wanted to create a card that has a little bit of a fold on the side. And I used a piece of basic white. This is cut to 11 by 4 1/4. It is scored at 4 1/4 and then scored in the middle at 5 1/2. And it's just a fun little design. It's not super fancy at all, but it's just a little bit different. And it's kind of cool that it will pop open. I'm not going to burnish this fold because I don't want it to be incredibly floppy, but I am going to go ahead and glue down that crease so that it will hold well. Now you can definitely use tear and tape on this. I'm just going to use some liquid glue because I have it on hand, but tear and tape would be a good option as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and burnish that down a little bit so that it will stay. And then because I have scored this at 4 1/4, I have a square that I'm dealing with. This is 4 1/4 high, and I scored it at 4 1/4. So this entire flap, this big piece, is a square. And that means what I'm going to do is I'm going to orient it as a square. So what I've done is I took a piece of the Evening Evergreen, one of the new in colors, which we all know is absolutely stunning. And I cut this to 4 1/8. And that way I'm going to have a little bit of a border all the way around the front of the card, which I like to have. Before I glued that down though, I used one of the layering circles dies, one of the scallop dies, because I want to have my sentiment in the middle, and I want to have a little bit of a frame behind that. And while I had those the layering circle dies out, I got out a piece of the new Pale Papaya and used some of my Memento black ink and inked up and stamped one of the sentiments from the stamp set. And I love the font. I think that's one of the things that really drew me to this stamp set, besides I like all the sentiments themselves. But I absolutely love the font, and I went ahead and stamped little card, big thanks, in Memento Black. And then I'm going to layer these two together, so we've got a little bit of a frame. But I'm just going to go ahead and put my square piece of the Evening Evergreen, and I'll use a little Tombow. I know watching somebody glue is definitely not the most exciting thing, so I hope you guys have a cup of coffee while you're watching this. And I'm going to layer that right on the top. And this is going to be just the perfect frame for the piece that I did in that wreath building, because it's going to be just a nice little 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. And then I've got the piece that I just stamped, and I'm going to put that right on the top. So nothing mystical or magical there. Just going to go ahead and again use some of my liquid glue. Whoever invented liquid glue is brilliant. I remember as a kid using those paste jars that we had that had the brush in the middle. And I guess I won't tell you that sometimes I actually liked the taste of that paste. Isn't that the most disgusting thing you've heard all morning? But maybe some of you also liked that. Just going to turn that over real quick and give it a little bit of a burnish with my finger. And then I was pleasantly surprised at the size of the scalloped die, because it fits perfectly, I think, in the design, right in the middle. And nothing super fancy about that, but I'm going to go ahead and just put that in the middle of the focal point. And you don't need to be completely persnickety on this, but you've got a really good visual, because these petals that are all equidistant from the center give you a great visual on where the center of that card is. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in the piece that I've also die cut, and I'm going to just try to look at this straight. So I'm sort of straightening up the bottom. I'm going to try my best and not be upset if I don't get it perfectly straight. But I'm trying to get that little card, which I know is a straight sentiment, so that it looks straight. And then I'm going to turn it on its side and just pretend that it looks straight enough, and I'm good. So I wanted to add a little bit more. I mean, I think this is super cute. It's very nice. It would be a great card, but I wanted to add just a little bit, just step it up a little bit. And I decided that I was going to stamp and punch some flowers from the bundle. And I wanted to give you a couple of thoughts about how to stamp when you've got one of these punches that has quite a few images. And I'll be honest, sometimes I feel like I'm wasting paper when I use these images, because they tend to use a lot of paper when you're actually punching them out. So here's something to think about. When you're using a stamp, you know how we all hold them like this so that we can see where the image is. The image that I'm going to be punching out is this one on the bottom. So a couple things. When I stamp that image, I'm going to look at how is that stamp oriented? How is that image oriented on the punch? And if you think about it, this is how the stamp is oriented. It's looking like an X. It doesn't look like the flower here, like a cross. It looks like an X. So I wanted to stamp my image like an X, because I'll be able to push that through the stamp, and theoretically I'm not going to waste a whole ton of paper. I always use scrap paper when I am stamping things that are going to be a single image that I'm punching out of a multiple image punch. And that way I'm not going to waste a lot of paper either. And the other thing is, you need to figure out how much leeway do you have you know, like this one at the bottom, I'm not going to have a lot of room to move the paper. So I'm going to stamp my image toward the bottom of the paper. So I stamped a bunch of these and I punched them out, and I stamped them in the Fresh Freesia color. And then I used my Stamp and Write marker. This is the Pale Papaya on the brush end, and I just added a few little, a little bit of color to the center. And then I used my bone folder to give them a good crease. And just wanted to mention, you know, when you do this and you are punching a single image, you are inevitably going to waste a little bit of paper, because when I punch this, I'm going to get that leaf and I'm going to get part of the other images. Be happy. It's just the way it is. There are different ways to set up so that you can punch out everything. And also make sure that you have your images that you are going to punch out stamped far enough apart that, for example, that little leaf, I'm not going to cut off any of the flower that I've stamped when I punch that out. So you are going to waste a little bit, but if you use scrap paper, you're going to feel a lot better about yourself, and it's okay. It is absolutely okay. So to finish this card off, what I did was I grabbed some of the flowers that I had punched out. I'm not going to do all of these, because if I do a few, I will give you an idea of what I did. I just put a dab of glue on the bottom, and then I set them on my card so that the petals are offset from the way I stamped underneath. And that way it just gives a little bit more dimension to the flower. It makes it definitely look like it has a lot of interest and depth, and I thought it was kind of fun. So I did that all the way around, and again, that's going to take 8 of these little flowers, and I put them one on top of the other and ended up with the card that looks like this. So I've got all those flowers that are glued on to the top. And then I wanted to add a little bit of decoration to the side, just to give it a little bit of oomph. And what I did for that, I'll bring back in the one that I started putting the flowers on. I cut a piece of the Evening Evergreen cardstock. This is 1 inch by 4 1/8. It's the same length as the Evening Evergreen that is the frame under here. And then I used the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder and just gave it a little bit of texture, and that eventually will go right here. And then I wanted to bring in some of the Pale Papaya color. I am in love with this color, and I am in love with this ribbon. It is gorgeous, 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 and it makes the most beautiful bows. I used my bow maker and I tied a bow, and I also put a layer of the ribbon around this piece. So you'll see on the finished card, I put 1 layer of ribbon around that piece and used the magical tool that we all have. I will show you. This is the super, super technical tool. Good old Scotch tape. And what I did for this is I simply wrapped the piece of Evening Evergreen just top to bottom, and nothing fancy. Cut off a little bit of that ribbon, wrapped it right around, tried to get it as centered as I can. And with the Scotch tape, I will have some forgiveness if I need to move that later. So I have my piece of wrapped Evening Evergreen with the Pale Papaya on the top. And then I've got my bow, and I'm going to attach my bow with some glue dots and trim off the edges and come back with just a really fun side of the card that helps tie in that pale papaya in the middle and also in the center of the flowers. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and again, my real focus on this was to give you another idea, if you haven't already done this, of how to use your Stamparatus. There are so many ways that we can use the Stamparatus, not just for fantastic placement of stamping to get those images as perfect as we all like them to be, but it's a great set of second hands that you always have. And by building a simple template like this, you can create some amazing designs. And I hope you've enjoyed this. I look forward to seeing what you're going to create with a really simple stamp set and some images like this, and just excited to see what you might do with this wreath building idea. I so appreciate you watching this morning, and like Martinette said, without people watching, this stamp along idea definitely doesn't take flight. And it's so encouraging to have so many people share ideas. That's what we're all about. Please make sure that you come back at 11:15 in just a few minutes. Carolyn is going to be sharing another amazing project, I know. And then tonight at 6, Trish will be also sharing a project. So enjoy your day, and I hope you get some stamping in. See you soon. Bye-bye.